Hello, everybody. It's midday, Friday. It's 2025. This is the first wow of 2025. And already, Stephen Howe has developed a technical problem, which is that his Wi-Fi isn't going fast enough. So if you're a Wi-Fi provider out there and you think that you can sort that for him, do let him know. There he is. Mr. You look like Howe. That's the best way of describing it.
Do you know what happened there? Happy New Year, everyone. As you came over to me, I started waving, and I'm thinking, I've got no camera on, so no one can see, but I was sort of waving to everyone to sort of say hello, Happy New Year. Wi-Fi issues, I will attempt to resolve these during the broadcast, but I will participate verbally, not pictorially, if that is
Can
the
you
right
just do something for us before I introduce all of our special guests today? Can you just do that whole bit where you go, Dave?
No, I can't. Dave?
Yes, Hal?
Get the guests on. Stop messing around.
Okay, here we go. So today it's the big inclusion one. So we're including people that haven't got any Wi-Fi as well. And we've got two people here that know a lot about inclusion. And then we're going to bring in another special guest, who nobody knows about, just for 10 minutes or so as well, just to join in the whole conversation about inclusion. If you're watching this, I hope you can access it properly. Here's Jodie Greer and Melanie Costas. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hello.
It's been a while. Happy New Year, everybody.
And to you.
Happy New Year.
I'm Graham. This is Dot. And we have Melanie and Jodie. Yeah, Dot. Well, pulsing white circle on the screen with a little grey person symbol in the middle for anybody that can't see the screen.
It's a little bit like Prince, isn't it? I'm sort of the artist formerly known as Stephen Howe.
It's a little bit like that. Yeah. I'm expecting to say any minute, dearly beloved. And then carry on. There we go. So Melanie, Jodie, do tell us very briefly a little bit about yourself. So we'll start with Jodie.
So hi, everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Jodie Greer. I'm the CEO of Be People Smart. I'm a disability inclusion and accessibility consultant. And basically my aim in life is to make myself redundant because I really want to put human centricity back into business, where we actually remember that human beings are what business is all about.
Fantastic. And Melanie?
I love that, Jodie. Yeah, so with me, I'm founder and CEO of Rural Mental Health Matters, because when people live in rural areas, they don't have any access to any even basic essential support services in the first place. So that's not very inclusive. And then last year I founded Melanie Costas Consulting, which is similar to what Jodie does, but mine's from a lived experience with lots of different perspectives. So I have multiple disabilities, neurodivergence, anxiety, mental health illness, and I'm surviving breast cancer. So all of those things aren't talked about at all in the workplace, let alone in society. So my new hashtag for 2025 is Inclusify 2025. Surprise,
I love
surprise.
that. And as we're speaking, I can see the numbers of people watching going up rapidly, which is fantastic. If you're watching this today and you've got any questions, or you want to just put any comments in the comments so that we can comment on, then please do that. You can do that via the use of a keyboard, which is a modern piece of technology, which is marvelous. And I'm going to introduce the fifth person to the round table of events as well, and they will introduce themselves. So hello, how are you doing, my friend?
Hi, Graham. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I hope you can hear me okay. My Wi-Fi issues are all right.
Yeah, your Wi-Fi issues are absolutely fine.
You're pale into insignificance compared to mine. So sorry.
Well, I did have a bit of a mare getting on, and I had to reconnect to the Premier Inn Wi-Fi. So yeah, it must be catching this.
Tell us who you are and where you're coming from today, because it's quite exciting.
Yeah, so my name's Aj. I'm the founder of AAT Solutions. I'm completely blind, and similarly, so I run my own training company and accessibility awareness for schools and businesses regarding disabilities, and raising awareness really to let people know about just because you might have a disability doesn't stop you, achieving whatever you want.
Which is
and
fantastic.
Currently, I'm sat in a Premier Inn hotel because I'm in Manchester at the moment. Being a Scouse is not the favourite place of mine I like to visit.
enemy territory.
Yeah. That's it, yeah.
Have you run into any Manchester United fans or Manchester City fans while you're there? Or?
I'm trying to avoid them, to be honest.
Yeah. If you're watching and or listening and you're from Manchester and you love either of those two teams, good on you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome.
Yes,
as is anyone that supports any football team. Whilst we've got all these amazing experts on inclusion and accessibility, etc., in the room, from all of you, and we'll need to take it in turns. What did we see step up in 2024 in terms of inclusion, and what were you disappointed that we didn't see happen? Anyone want to lead off?
I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I'll be honest, I don't think we saw an awful lot of stepping up. Things went really, really quiet in businesses. Certainly in the UK, there was a lot of blame on election, and not just in the UK. But I think what is sad, and what just was sad not to see, is literally, we're in 2025 now, but it was in 2024, and we weren't seeing tangible actions taken by businesses to be genuinely inclusive. It just, it was very slim pickings, and it's got to do better. And businesses are missing out big time.
Do you want to explain? Maybe, Aj, you can explain that. Why are businesses missing out on not including inclusion as part of their agenda?
Essentially, Graham, they're missing out on top talent. I'm a firm believer people with any sort of impairment or disability, to get on in life, we have to actually work much harder and much smarter just to sort of compete. And by doing that, we sort of build this sort of resolve, this determination, this drive. And we actually become, highly skilled at being adaptable, thinking outside the box, having these great ideas and being able to sort of handle pressure. And I think those sorts of skills are so valuable in the workforce, and businesses are missing out on, that sort of skill sets.
Now, Aj knows about this, right? Does anyone know what Aj played when he was a little bit younger than he is now? Does anyone know what sport he played? They're all shaking their heads saying they don't know. Aj, you're going to marvel at this. Okay, Aj, tell them what you all did.
So I used to play for England and Great Britain in blind football, and I captained them in the Beijing Paralympics in 2008.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Amazing. I apologise for my cat, by the way. He wants to be included. Look, I've got a grey fluffy cat, Aj. Just to explain, I've got a grey fluffy cat, Aj, who's just come into the picture. So he's very clingy, Teddy. So we've got him joining.
So what can we do better? What needs to happen next, Melanie? What do businesses need to do to start getting accessibility, inclusion, etc., onto the agenda?
Stop patching it up. Stop adding a tick box. Stop having one-off workshops that you had 3 years ago and tick that as the box of compliance. Stop adhering to the minimum of the Equality Act of 2010. Listen to your employees when they say they want a reasonable adjustment, and don't think, well, it's not reasonable for us, so therefore no. And be proactive about it. Be proactive about it. Don't wait for somebody to come to you, because we know, don't we, that only around 4% of disabled employees will actually feel comfortable disclosing their disability in the workplace, which is quite scary. So, the policies, the strategies that companies have obviously isn't working. So they need to sort of reach out and not expect employees to reach out, because they're scared. At the end of the day, if they think they hold their hands up and they say, I've got a disability, or I've got a neurodivergent condition, or I've got a mental illness, how's that going to affect me? how's that going to affect my career prospects? They're going to get rid of me. They're going to see me as a troublemaker. All of these things are inside their heads. And actually, it's because of the attitudes of wider society. And I'll let other people talk about that. But that I feel really strongly that we're 2025 now, for goodness sake, not 1875. And we really need to start, putting disabled people on lived experience boards in companies and, in senior positions, people that have got lived experience of disabilities, cancer, neurodivergence, everything. And obviously visual and hearing impairments.
Yeah.
Graham, one of the questions I like to ask, this, whenever we've had people from sort of the health sector or any sector, is how much of this is down to money? So if there was a blank check, as it were, would this help address or resolve a lot of the problems? Or is it attitudes? It isn't just about checkbooks.
So can I jump in on that?
So good. Sorry, go on, Adge.
Yeah, I'd like to jump on that because I agree with the earlier point. I think a lot of it is attitudes. And again, from a personal, experiences, I always get it where people are fascinated and go, wow, it's so amazing. You can use your mobile phone when you can't see. But it's not amazing. It's just a normal activity. And it's that expectations of what you expect a disabled person or anyone with, neurodiversity, any sort of impairment, your expectations of what they can do. If that's set low, then when you have that in your workplace, automatically you're going to think, well, you're not going to be able to do the job. So even before any money comes into it, it's that number one thing of, well, I don't think they're going to be able to do it, whether that's someone already in the workforce or coming to an interview. So we need to change those attitudes. So people, just because you've got, an impairment or something, you can do what, like anything else that anyone else does.
And the other
That is
thing
a
is,
massive part of that, isn't it? Yeah, it's a massive part of that. I was just going to say, we've had a couple of comments in. Debbie Watts says agree, and Ian Clegg says, ask, don't assume what people need. It's not just assuming what people need; it's assuming what people can do as well. And I'm guessing that the amount of money that gets spent or put into making change happen culturally within a business or whatever is going to be determined by people's belief systems and what they assume is right or wrong. So if people assume that actually that these people over there in a wheelchair, or these people that can't see, or these people that have this disability or whatever, don't actually need these things, or don't, it doesn't actually, it's not actually a problem to them or whatever, or they assume that people can't do things when they can do things, then they won't spend the money in those areas, right? People, it's the same with any aspect of business. People only spend money when they've come to the belief themselves that there's value there.
But it doesn't always cost stuff. That's what I was going to say. So most reasonable adjustments, which I don't really like that term. Can we just call it, putting us on a level playing field, please? But most
or let's just call it being respectful to each other.
Yeah, just giving us what we need, right? Most of them don't really cost anything. And you can even just put posters up just about disability awareness, what is and what isn't a disability, because most people think, let's be honest, that the global symbol for disability, which is somebody in a wheelchair, is, inverted commas, that's somebody who's disabled, full stop. And that's it. And there's a lot of education that needs to go on behind the scenes, and that can be done with the employers not really spending that much money. They can just do it with a blooming Canva account and a printer, really, if they really want to start things off. I'm talking about to start a conversation, because it's anybody can be disabled at any point in their lives. That's the thing. No one's immune from it. The same with mental health, and the same with neurodivergence. I want
to be contentious here and throw this into the equation, right? Because I have this conversation with my youngest kids on a fairly regular basis. Now, just to put this out there, my youngest as well is registered now as disabled because he has a dual diagnosis of ADHD and autism, right? But nobody necessarily wants to be labelled disabled, right? are we still? Is part of the problem that we're still using words and narrative and everything else, which creates a us and them? Or
I think disabled people are taking it back. I mean, I'm seeing so many disabled people actually, you know, really owning their identity, absolutely changing the narrative of language. Now, there is a big thing to this, though, because you will see some people saying things like don't use terms like differently abled. And it's really important to note that some people like the term, some people prefer it, and that's their way of identifying, particularly culturally, depending on where you are in the world. But yeah, I do think people are taking it back. And actually, I think there's strength in that, because it used to be when you talked about disability, that a lot of people on the receiving end of that conversation would kind of want to sort of shrivel up, feel awkward. They didn't really know what to do with it and all that stuff. So I think we are seeing change. It's not as quick as I'd like to see it, but I think with language, we are seeing change. The word disabled is not a bad word. It is just, you know, I'll wear glasses, this person's disabled in another way, whatever it might be.
But that's the problem. It has become associated with potentially with something that is different, and maybe a whole group of people who aren't disabled, who sit outside of that, see themselves as different in some way, right? So part of the problem and part of the transference of attitude is actually those people don't see themselves as being affected themselves by that, right? Now, I'm going to put this to you. I love the term messy, right? I'd love it if we just called everybody messy, right? If we just said mankind is messy, right? Or human beings are messy, and therefore we've all got, right, something that makes us unique and different, and you know, we've all got needs, right? We've all got things that we need that other people don't have, right? And if we started accepting and started asking outside of ourselves, stop being quite so egotistical and started asking other people what they need, right, then actually we break that down. Now I'm simplifying it. That's not the answer, but do you understand where I'm coming from there? Part of the problem is that a lot of people see it as, oh, I'm going to do this for those people. And then I you know,
I get what you mean.
I'm a good person for doing this, but I don't need it personally, you know.
Not a charity case, we're just disabled, or I know. I think a lot of people think about disability in two different camps as well. You've got the poor disabled people who are pitied, and I've had it no end of times. Why have you got a stick? Oh, you're too young to have back problems. I've got spinal disabilities. Oh, what happened? You know, as if whatever. And then you've got the, oh, look how wonderful they are, the Paralympians, right? And if they can do that, why can't you? You know, so you've got all of these awful attitudes that aren't necessarily good. But I think, you know, it goes back to people only know what they know. And I think people are often afraid to say anything, and sometimes the wrong thing comes out. I don't think there's a lot of people that intentionally set out to be ableist or say ableist things. I think Jodie will agree with me here. I think, you know, everybody will agree, hopefully, that most people, their intentions aren't to deliberately upset us. I just think that maybe because of the lack of awareness and a lack of education around what is and what isn't a disability and neurodivergence, mental illness, everything, then people are a little bit sort of scared to say anything. I've had people cross the road as well, by the way, if I've got a mobility aid, because they don't want to speak to me.
Do you know what's interesting? It's interesting, Melanie, what you said there, because I think a lot of it does come down to education. Because I know, I think a lot of people, and I'm probably I'm actually probably going to describe myself in all of this and be honest and say, I think this is me. I think sometimes people are uncomfortable around the use of language and phrasing and when I say what to call someone, you know what I mean by that, as to say,
Yeah.
as to what's the right language I should use that is the correct language and acceptable to the person who I'm talking about or talking to. So I think that's the education piece is a massive thing, because someone might go, I don't know how to address that person who has a stick, for an example, as you said, because am I going to say something that's offensive or use the wrong terminology? And I think if people knew what to say, I know that's very simplistic, I think that would then help. I think people are sometimes afraid to, because they're going to offend, and that's an education piece, that they don't know how to start the conversation, engage in the conversation, and engage with that person, because they don't know the right words, thinking I'm going to say the wrong thing or offend. And that's, maybe I'm right or wrong. I'll be interested to know what you
Can
think
I give
about
a
that.
quick example, and then actually let's go around the experts as well. Actually, Aj and I did a post on his account on LinkedIn. You won't mind me saying this, whereby we used ChatGPT. It was actually writing about using ChatGPT to do this, but we used ChatGPT to create the alt text for an image, and then we put that up there to say, you know, this is what ChatGPT will produce as alt text or whatever. Now, he got some rebuff from someone within the you know, the inclusion community for that, saying it was too verbose. You know, you know, it needs to be you know, much more succinct than that, etc. But we kind of tried to come back on that a little bit to go, yeah, but do you know what? Wouldn't it be better that people start using, at least start using ChatGPT and putting alt text there than not putting alt text there? And then with time, trained ChatGPT to get better at doing the alt text, so that at least everybody was doing alt text. You know, sometimes I do feel, I'm going to stick my neck out here, do feel sometimes from the community to do with inclusion and accessibility, there's this rage in, it's like, you're not doing it the right way, and that suddenly puts everybody off, and then they just stop doing it. And I think that needs to stop, because that's making assumptions and going too far the other way. That is saying to people, we're not going to meet in the middle here. We're not going to, you know, rather than that, you really want people to go, thanks for trying. Can I give you some pointers?
Can I just also add something to this, though, because we're talking about educating people, which is massive and it's important. But I think where we're still missing pretty much around the world is we are literally not educating people from the start of their lives. So we go all through school, all through higher education, even in, like, you know, depending on what you're learning for your chosen profession. We are not learning about disability confidence. We are not learning that disability is just a fact of life. And we are not learning what accessibility looks like, how that user experience plays out, you know, and how to engage with people. It just doesn't exist. So unless you literally take the time to go out and find out more, or you're engaging with people like on this call today, and you're actively learning from people, you know, it's just not there. And I think as a society, getting deep now, but as a society, there's a massive, massive gap that we literally aren't teaching people to communicate with people.
Yeah, we're not teaching people peopling. We're not, are we? So true.
Aj, you might want to come in on this, because I know yesterday you recorded a podcast with an education consultant, and actually that the main audience for that will be sort of headmasters, head teachers, etc. of within schools or whatever. And you do a lot of schools work, don't you? For you, why is that so important?
Literally just what we've just talked about. So it's to try to readdress that balance of giving children the opportunity to see someone who you know, maybe has a disability, get on in life, how you overcome those challenges, show them that, you know, yes, you might lose one sense, but then you can do other things with other senses, and you know, excuse the pun, but it really does open their eyes on, wow, like this person can do this even with their eyes closed. And those people are going to be the next gen. Those people are going to, you know, be the next counsellors or whatever it is, putting in roads with Mark, and those experiences having someone in school, or it stays with them. I've still got emails from teachers like 6-7 months later saying the kids are still talking about your visit when you came into school.
Oh.
And you don't get enough of that. One visit in a whole schooling system is not going to be enough. But if it was more of in the curriculum, making kids aware and all that sort of stuff, I think that would be massive. It's not going to fix the short term issue, but hopefully in the long term, it does start to make more of a difference.
And then the kids go home and talk to their parents, and then that ripple effect.
Exactly. I just need to check in with Adj at this point. It's now 12:25. Did you need to go?
I will have to love you and leave you, I'm afraid. Yeah,
that's all right. Yeah, he needs to go and organise some food and stuff.
Lovely to see you.
Yeah,
thank you. I'll catch up with you later.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
I'm waving.
Brilliant. I'm glad we could add him in
Brilliant.
at the last minute there as well. That was fantastic. It's really interesting. When I had to go into school and have a conversation with the deputy head, etc., about our little one, to do with some outrages that he was having at school to do with his diagnosis, and I sort of questioned back the other way, and I said, so I understand, we've gone through this process now of having a diagnosis, and now they look towards trying to put together a plan and see whether that will get accepted, and that has to get accepted for funding, and that it has to meet certain criteria. But I did ask at the same time, but what training do you have as general teaching staff for dealing with people with different conditions, disabilities, whatever you want to call them, messiness? And they said no, none. It just doesn't happen. It's not part of what certainly hasn't been for teachers. I mean, I'd love to hear from teachers if it is the case now that it's starting to go into the teaching curriculum for teacher training, but I don't think it is. But if it's not there and then it's not done in schools, right, then basically what you're doing is you're relying on money being provided at a certain point for a specialist to come in and sit in there, and if that money doesn't happen, if that provision of support doesn't happen, then that child doesn't get it, right? But as you say, if this should just be part of our sort of cultural development, full stop.
Yeah, I don't think we develop as a culture, and that's what's sad, because everyone decided how something should work back in a day, and it still should work like that. And basically this is how someone, I mean, let's just go for schooling, because it's what we're talking about. This is how someone should learn. This should work for them, and this is what it looks like, and we're going to put them in this box, and if that box doesn't fit them, oh well, they'll have to just sort themselves out. Because there's this thing, and even with AHCPs, not to turn this just into an educational needs stream, but even with an AHCP, it takes years for a lot of parents to fight to even get there before they can then start getting support in schools. And in fairness to schools, they've got all these different pressures. They're being checked left, right, and centre for all sorts. I won't profess to be the expert there. But it's really tough. There's all these conflicting priorities, and even if they've got really good intentions, it can be nigh impossible for them without the right support from where it needs to come from.
Yeah. Now, Marianne Mills has commented. And I know Marianne, and she has a diagnosis of ADHD herself, but she worked in a school for kids with emotional and behavioural needs. She had no training. What is going on?
It's not even just in the education system. It's across all public services. So I'll give you an example. So 1 in 2 of us, according to Cancer Research UK, are going to develop cancer. You know that I'm surviving breast cancer. Not one consultant has asked me how I am mentally. And even when I was diagnosed with PTSD 6 months after my breast cancer diagnosis, because I had a complete mental breakdown, and when I was diagnosed, even when I was explaining this to my oncologist, his attitude, well, actually, he's a nice guy. So this just explains, perfectly how they don't understand. He said, oh, really? I'm sorry to hear that. He said, but you're explaining this really coherently. What did he expect? Me to just be like a mumbling wreck, seeing things in front of me because I have hallucinations and stuff like that. I did before I had my therapy. But yeah, it's like so the simple solution to this, because I do like solutions, is when you first find something, be it a lump, wherever it is, whatever happens, you first find something and you go to the doctors, you generally get referred on what's called a fast track in the NHS. So you see somebody within 2 weeks to have your tests and whatever. A letter comes out. On that letter, just one line. If you need emotional or mental health support, this is the number to call. That's it. That's it. That's one thing. Now, most people probably won't go on to find out they've got cancer, hopefully. But those that do will go back to that letter, because we do blooming keep things in this country, let's be honest. We'll go back to that letter and we'll know where to go to get help. Or even one question when you go to your first oncology appointment about your mental health. How are you actually feeling about this? Because we know that what affects us physically affects us mentally and vice versa. So it's just being about proactive and simple solutions that can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that? Because it's all about joined up thinking, right? And just to, obviously that's very personal, because obviously it's your own well-being and it's about health as well. But even bringing it back into business, just as an example, because my head starts whizzing all different scenarios when people talk. But like, for instance, when people go for a recruitment process, even if they get the adjustments they need in that process, they often at an onboarding stage, if they get offered the job, get there and it's like, oh, so you don't have the software, you don't have the kit, you don't have the desk setup, you don't have because everybody seems to be a bit like, you talk about the NHS there, but people are in silos, right? People don't collaborate, they don't engage. I talk to NHS trusts and sometimes they come on my training, and don't get me wrong, I'm more than happy to invite every single trust in the country onto training, feel free, but they don't engage. So there's no like joined up approach there, like across the country. So this team who have already done it, they put a process in place locally that doesn't even touch on those over there, or someone in Bedfordshire or whatever it'll be. And it just amazes me that organisations, including the NHS, don't have any kind of joined up thinking. It's really rare.
Well,
I know,
how many times have we talked about that on this program, Stephen? How many times have we talked about siloed approaches to everything?
We had this conversation, and I think as I said, this isn't an NHS bashing session. It's an example that you can then extrapolate out from the public sector into the commercial world. But we had this conversation, and they said very much the same, pretty much exactly what Jodie's experience was. It wasn't necessarily a case of, and I started my first comment was about money a long time ago. It isn't a case of throwing money at it. It's the cohesion and the collaboration between departments that actually it's all there. It just isn't joined up. And obviously at least the size of the NHS is huge, but that's one of the biggest things. And I know, having discussed it on this and also outside of this environment with other people who work in that business, have said it's just the fact that it's so big, and one person does this and they do that, and actually if they did it together, they'd probably save half the time.
Yeah, let's just take this back. Within the ergonomics world, if you like, if you take this back to sort of like the basics of DSE, display screen equipment assessments that go on out there, quite often known as workplace assessments or ergonomic assessments in the first instance, right? So many companies now will do those, right? But the way that it's done is that someone will come in to do that very basic DSE assessment, right? Now, whilst they are talking to that person, it is, and I've, did this for 15, 20 odd years. Whilst you're doing that, if you know what you're doing and you've had training in different areas, you will pick up that person doesn't just need advice about how to sit and posture and things like that, but they may have some mental health issues. They may have specific learning difficulties. They may have another disability. They may, I mean, the mental health, as I say, it could go on and on and on, right? But what you then have to do is you then have to signpost that to somebody else. Somebody else then has to come in. A completely different organization gets involved in doing it, and it goes on and on and on. And somewhere in that equation, normally someone taps out and goes, "It's too much. Can't cope with all of this." Right? No, it's beginning to get there, but it's incredibly rare for someone to go, what we might need to do is do better conversations with each of our employees in the first place. Really understand, create that culture where people can talk, feel comfortable to talk, actually find out what their actual needs are, right? And get all the experts in the room at the same time and make that coordinated and make that approach actually work for that person, right? It doesn't happen. Everything happens in silos. Normally somebody taps out of that process midway through because it's just too much. They're seeing too many people and they feel like they're being passed from pillar to post. It's not right.
It's not just that. I worked in adult social care for 2 different local authorities, and I've worked in the NHS, and not even the computer systems talk to each other. So it's not just the departments. You've got honestly, you wouldn't believe it. One team that I worked in for hospital social work team, when I worked at Luton and Dunstable Hospital years ago, and I still live in Bedfordshire, and it was brilliant. It was like a breath of fresh air. We had OTs, occupational therapy, physios, social workers, healthcare assistants, all in the same team, in the same building. My goodness. And if we went out to see somebody, we could do joint visits, right? Because we, as social work, that was my job, we would go out and we would do their assessment for maybe home care needs or whatever it was that they needed, maybe. And we would notice that they might need some equipment, or they might be feeling a little bit low, or any of the things that we pick up on during our assessment, because we have to be like the oracle. And, we'd go back to the team, we could actually talk to them and go, do you know what? Mrs. Jane Doe that lives in whatever street, she could do with, okay, so I'll go back with an OT, a physio, whatever else they needed. And it was all done.
And the thing is, these things can be done. It's just, now, and money may come into this at this point. Either money doesn't want to be spent to make it happen, or again, attitude say that it doesn't need to happen. I had to go up August time to Bristol Hospital to the lipid clinic for testing, etc. Took me months to get there. Well, no, it took me over a year to get there, actually. But when I had my test or whatever, they said, where are you from? And I said, well, outside of Bristol. They said, oh, it's a shame that you're not in Bristol, because in Bristol we can talk directly to the doctors in Bristol. Our system is allowed to talk to the doctors directly in Bristol. If you're outside of the area, we cannot send your results onto your doctor wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
So then I had to go for a separate set of tests with my doctor to confirm. So they had their own set of test results to go alongside. It just doesn't make sense. That must be costing the taxpayer thousands, right? You're duplicating up.
I was just going to say, the irony is, if they do make these absolutely essential changes in the systems and in the processes, it is short-term investment for long-term gain. I mean, ultimately, they're going to see massive cost avoidance because they're going to have so much, it's joined up thinking, but they're going to have so much, more efficiency within how they engage and how they actually treat people. But they're also, I mean, ultimately, we're supposed to be, again, about people. And I know I keep saying that, but it's supposed to be about that experience, about feeling cared for, about actually getting the services and the treatments and things that you need. And this isn't just about medical, because this can apply in, corporate business as well. Being able to actually have that collaboration as just, business as usual, I just don't understand how they don't recognise that as a massive step forward.
Stephen, do you think we need to start really trying to measure sort of presenteeism and sort of effort with a bit more, right? Because I wonder, like, how many, I think I've seen it over and over again with people that I've had to go and see, whereby if they get into a point where they're just worn down by the process and the system, they stop putting effort into the work, right? So this is not even about necessarily retention and, you know, the cost of what it costs to train somebody or whatever. It might be that person stays within the business, but if they become disinterested in it because they just don't feel like they're getting anywhere with all of the things that they need, etc., they may stay there, but they may be running on 70%, 60% as opposed to 100%.
And they're looking elsewhere.
It's how comfortable are people to truly answer?
Yeah.
True.
I'll give you an example of that. I know personally quite a few people who used to work in home care. And the reason they stopped working in home care, they actually really like the job. They love being able to sort of actually go and engage with different people and obviously help them day to day. The reason everyone I know stopped doing it was because of how the processes kind of hindered them being able to do the job well and all that sort of stuff. And they didn't want to feel they were going into people's homes, not making sure they were sort of, you know, fed, cleaned and supported sufficiently. And so rather than feeling like that was a half job Bob, no offense to anyone called Bob, they decided that actually, do you know what, I just can't do this job because if I can't do it well, I feel like a bit of a fraud, and they went elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is the same, Jodie, in teaching, in social work, in all of the public sector. We're seeing, you know, GPs leaving in their droves, you know, consultants in the NHS. We all think, oh, they get paid loads. They're under so much pressure. Everybody's heading to burnout faster than, you know, the speed of light. I think that it just, you know, going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you put the effort in and you are proactively inclusive in the first place, that ripple effect and the return on the investment is absolutely massive. And what you end up then is you end up with employees that are more loyal, they're more engaged, they're happier, they're healthier, you know, across every workforce, public sector, private sector, every level. And if you educate one person and they have more of an understanding, that has a ripple effect. So
now, Graham, in all of this, one of the things we've discussed numerous times is AI. So can we harness, in all these things we've been discussing, can we harness the power of AI to address and resolve a number of these topics that we've been discussing today? Could that be something that could sort of flick the switch and address some of these problems? It can't be as simple as that, but does AI have a part to play in what we've been discussing?
Yeah, I think it does. I think AI can be used as a force for good, because I think anything that enables people to do things without necessarily them having to think about it as yet another process helps, right? Let's go back to that example that we were talking about earlier, right? It wasn't that long ago when you uploaded a video to, I mean, this is going out on LinkedIn. That's one of the platforms it's going out on. It wasn't that long ago when if you uploaded a video to LinkedIn, right, there were no captions there.
Yeah.
It is AI that now puts captions in. Are they perfect? Possibly not. Is it better than not having them there? Probably yes.
Absolutely.
Right? Will it get better over time because now it's there and it's feeding on big data? Yes, it will. And there are going to be people behind that will be, you know, looking at it and going, is it getting better? Is it learning? So I think that AI tools, and actually, I mean, I do quite a lot of work with Adge, and here tell you that there is quite a lot of, especially for people with visual impairments, there's quite a lot of AI that's coming in that's really, really quite helpful. There's he's putting a post out this week about a new sort of smart stick device that actually like shapes to find direction. There's great stuff. happening there. So I do think AI will push things through, but it's about having those attitudes at the same time to say that we want AI to be doing this and putting the emphasis in the right places. And we do need the attitude to change from some of the people that are in the sort of inclusion and accessibility sector as well, to stop jumping on people's backs if they try to use stuff to get better at stuff and it's not quite right as well. So that actually, you know, there's more. The main thing that needs to happen is there needs to be action, right? And continued conversation, right? I totally understand though that probably at the moment, and that's where Jodie led off here, is that for too long now all we've had is the conversation but not necessarily the action,
and so not even all the conversation really.
There's a song in there somewhere by Elvis, isn't there? That's all I was thinking in my head.
All I was thinking. Yeah.
Go on, sing it then. Sing it.
No, Graham will sing it. He's the musician.
Not today, but maybe for a private showing afterwards. But yeah, that's right. And I know we've got Marianne commenting away in the background as well. And you know, one of the things that she's really passionate about, I mean, she's a trainer that trains trainers, and it's again, it's amazing. One of the things that she's finding is like come back from big organizations where they're going, we don't actually have to train people who are training. Now that's amazing. In 2025, that we have become a culture where we're going, it's okay if someone's got experience, that's okay. But it's not enough. People do need to learn. People do need to bring their standards up. They do need to bring their education up, because
absolutely,
you know,
otherwise you need to learn how to engage with other people and how to deliver the training so that you're aware of everybody's needs as a delegate or an attendee, don't you? So
that's a massive part of what she's been doing, actually, is she's actually rewritten her AET to make sure that it's 100% neurodiverse friendly and actually takes into consideration, you know, all of the needs of different learners and educates people about neurodiversity at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. People go, well, I'm good at training. I know that because I get good feedback. But it's so easy to get good feedback when you're in the room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And does it mean that actually your training's any good and the education's any good? What about all of the people that actually left the room and went, yeah, I know I said it was all right, but actually it sucked. It wasn't.
Or they made it about themselves, or some trainers just make the whole thing, especially with lived experience. So Jodie will probably nod away. In the lived experience field, you get people just thinking they're the expert on, say, spinal disabilities. I have a lot of them. I would not dare go and speak to a room of people and say, this is what it is like for spinal disabilities across the nation. I would say about how my experiences are, and from the training that I've had in my background, you know, I mean, I've been trained on the Mental Health Act, the deprivation of liberties, all different that you can imagine with social work, right? But are we still learning? Am I still learning? Yes. I've learned a lot from Jodie, for example. You know, talking about AI, I like to say that the most important AI of all is accessibility and inclusion AI. And I think that I use ChatGPT a lot, not to write my posts, but to help me with them. Because sometimes things that come out of this neurodivergent brain don't necessarily make sense to everybody in LinkedIn land. So the paragraphs are the wrong way round. You know, sometimes the brain's going faster than the mouth, or vice versa. So, you know, to dump it all into chat, that's brilliant. That's been a game changer for me. But some people will use it to actually help them to.
It has, but I'm gonna be slightly diversive on that and say at the same time we still want to see more posts from people who are neurodivergent that actually look and sound neurodivergent, because other people need to understand how your brain's going on.
You need to add to it. You can't just copy and paste.
Oh yeah, but what I'm saying is I like to see those messy posts sometimes, right? Not everybody might.
Oh, well, you know I do those.
But
I
I
do
like
those
to
as
see.
well.
I like to see the mess. I just think one of the things that we ought to sort of wave a flag for is encouraging people to be more honest and open
Yeah.
and show their mess, right?
I'm
Because
sometimes too honest for my own good.
Can I add to this though? Because thinking it from a different point of view. So when you're posting on social media, absolutely, and I love a bit of authenticity, right? But for instance, when it comes to job applications, we're still in this horrible age where it's CVs and cover letters and nothing's moved on since about 1920. But anyway, so the thing for me is, since we've had spell checker, for instance, no one has an issue someone using a spell checker. If they use a spell checker, it's expected. Since we've had spell checkers, it's almost like, forbidden to send anything through with a spelling error, which is also a little bit grating. But here's my question now. So I'm not particularly a ChatGPT convert. I'm still playing. But there's this whole thing that when people complete, I don't know, when they send in their own details and so on, often if they seem to have come from the likes of ChatGPT, then it's kind of like, it's downgraded, it's not valid, and so on and so forth. But actually, isn't it just a tool to enable someone to create something that meets what is actually the expectations of where it's being delivered to? And so you've still got to give them your details. You've still got to feed it in. You've still got to have the confidence in that total output that is what you wanted to send. So, for instance, for someone for whom sign language is a first language, written English, even if they are English, so written English is absolutely a second language and can be quite complex. Well, we know English is complex anyway, so it's quite complex, and it can be really difficult to portray yourself professionally in a way that is expected on the receiving end. Why can't people use these tools? Why is spell checker okay?
I think you're totally right.
I use it for that. I use it for that as well. That's what I meant. You've said it much better than I.
No, but like companies are saying they're checking stuff to see if it seems
to
have come from one of these routes.
Yeah, I don't think it should be downgraded. I think actually it shows creativity and outside of the box thinking, right? Yep. I went for, sorry Graham, you're waiting just to come in, but I went for a job interview where I had, I was going to be working with the NHS and I was going to be delivering a national innovative product, right? I didn't get the job, but I had to do a PowerPoint presentation. And at that time, this was a few years ago, I'm a bit of a tech dinosaur still, I couldn't do that. I had no clue. So I went on to Fiverr or someone like that and got them to do it. And I got asked about it. And I felt so like Jodie's just said, you can't really say, because I lied, and it was obviously written all over my face. But actually, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing that instead of going, oh shit, what do I do? What do I do? I thought, right, I'm going to nail this. I still had to give the person that created the PowerPoint presentation my ideas, my notes, my everything else. So it was me, but they just did the tech stuff, right?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that?
Really good. When people hand in their assignments, I encourage them to use ChatGPT, but I ask that they show they can apply the knowledge by giving examples. And that's absolutely
I like
right.
That.
Yeah.
I really like that. I can tell you I'm doing a course at the moment on men's mental health if you're interested. But I'm doing a course at the moment. And interestingly, when I've had my coursework marked, it comes up with a little caveat that says that you have passed, but these will be, reviewed. And if it's deemed that you've used ChatGPT or similar, that you will be asked to revise it. And that's what made me also start thinking that actually, if I was one of those users, it's still got to come from me. You can't even copy and paste into this thing. So I did that in Word and learned the hard way. I had to write it again. But yeah, and that's really interesting for me. So Marianne, I'm with you. Love it. Loving your work.
And here's the interesting thing about all of this. What do you think is doing the checking? It's more AI. So it's AI checking AI, checking AI, checking AI.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, long gone are the days where the HR directors sifting through all, hundreds of whatever applications. So the application process itself, I think we've talked about this already, is not inclusive, not at all.
I think what you should do is you should have to make it easier for the people at the other end, you should have like a little elevator pitch on your CV or whatever at the top, which is really very short, where you can put anything in. That should be checked by a human. Depending upon whether the human likes it or not or whatever, it then goes into the pile. right? So keep humans in the thing, and then you can put in there. I've used ChatGPT to do this. The reason being is I have a disability, which means I'm rubbish at writing. So therefore, I've used ChatGPT. But guess what? You say that you're an inclusive organisation. So if you now throw this in the bin, I'm gonna be suing your ass, and that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But
Or even can we have an inclusive recruitment agency, please? Note to everybody out there that says you can apply from send your CV, send a video, send an audio, of how you want to apply. Because shouldn't it be about that? Shouldn't it be about
I know someone that runs a recruitment agency that might be interested in having that conversation with you. So there we go. We're virtually out of time. We could have had this conversation all day, and I think what we will do is come back and do it again at some point in 2025, because it's such a great conversation. So the conclusion really is that we haven't really moved on at all, which is incredibly sad. As we have,
but they haven't.
But that means that there's a world of opportunity there as well. I think what we'll do is very quickly leave with what that opportunity is. Maybe Jodie, you could just leave us with what the Purple Pound offers people out there that look at inclusion.
So the Purple Pound, for anyone who doesn't know what it is the spending power of disabled people in their households. And globally, it's worth a staggering $13 trillion US. If you don't want a slice of that pie, then I'd love to see your business model. In the UK alone, it's worth £274 billion every year. So that is a huge market that most businesses are literally not tapping into, because they are either explicitly or inadvertently excluding disabled people because of the way they're doing business.
Crazy. There you go. What staggering figures! Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad. I thought you might have it off the top of your head, but there you go. Imagine if we all put that as a LinkedIn post tomorrow and put that figure at the top. You know, all these people that do sort of like 10-figure months. If we suddenly like put billions in there and whatever, everybody would want to read it. And then as they read down, they go, all I've got to do is start thinking about other people more than myself for a minute.
Great. You know how we sort of give the shows names. And by the way, I know my picture isn't matching up with the words, but I thought I've got to at least show my mush. This show should be called The Purple Dollar.
The Purple Dollar. There we go.
That's the show name. There you go. Like in Friends, and they have episodes. They have specific. This one's called The Purple Dollar.
When I upload it.
And pink. Purple and pink in brackets.
Pink and purple dollar.
Purple.
Okay. When I upload it to Spotify later, and the transcripts, etc., we'll make sure that that's all in there. So there. If by the way, if you want to get a transcript for this, you can get a transcript for this when it uploads to Spotify. That's now an option. So keeping it as accessible as we can. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you to Jodie, thank you to Melanie, and thank you to Adj as well for coming along. Thank you to everybody that's commented. We will be back. We're now making WOW every 2 weeks, just so that we can get the quality and the caliber of guests up, and also so that we can wash our clothes between episodes. So we will be back in 2 weeks' time. But until then, look after yourselves and bye for now.
Thank you. Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.